This is Artful Discourse, your weekly escape into the vibrant world of creativity, culture, and intellectual exploration. I'm your host, Benjamin Kirk, and I invite you to join me on a journey through the rich tapestry of human thought and the beating heart of artistic expression at Fresno State's College of Arts and Humanities.
Good morning and welcome. My name is Jefferson Beavers, and I'm sitting in as host this week of Artful Discourse for Benjamin Kirk. Today, our guests are two Fresno State alumni connected with the Hmong American Ink Stories Club on campus. First, we have Yia Lee, who was the co-founder of the club, and Phoua Lee, who is the current club president. Hello, Yia. Hello, Phoua.
Hi, Jefferson. Thank you for having us.
2024 is a big year for Hmong American Ink Stories Club. The acronym is spelled HAIS, which is pronounced as HAI. The word "hai" in Hmong language means to say, to speak, to vocalize. And this spring, the group is producing its 5th anniversary literary journal, one of the only journals of its kind in the nation, maybe the world, where they create a space for amplifying Hmong and Asian Pacific writers and other marginalized voices. I'm grateful to talk with you both about this amazing book. Let's start with Yia. Yia, I know that you are a Fresno State alumni. You're currently teaching in the English department. But when you co-founded the High Literary Journal, you were a graduate student in our Master of Fine Arts program. So I thought we could start off by telling us a little bit about, why did you start the club and the journal? What was the goal when you and your peers first started?
Well, first of all, I would like to again thank you, Jefferson and Benjamin, for having us. So when we first founded High, it was at the end of our first year with the MFA program here at Fresno State, and I remember thinking, um, when I first came to the MFA program, I wasn't really sure what to expect, but it was like really amazing to meet Jer, who is the president when we co-founded the club, and also New, who was the vice president of the club. Um, it was just really amazing to meet them and to gain a sense of community with them because, before that time, I was I always felt alone as a writer, right? And especially as a Hmong writer, where not a lot of people that I knew were writers. So I thought it was like very lonely and I thought I was alone and I thought it was like a weird thing for me to like writing, right? But then I met New and Jur in our MFA program and it was like really amazing how we kind of hit it off together. And so we knew we wanted to do something. Um, and so I think this is always in the back of our mind too, but Jer first proposed this idea that, hey, we should make a group and we should do something. We should have workshops. We should have a journal. And I was like, yes, yes, count me in. That's so amazing. So that was how we found it. It was a sense of community and a sense of like, hey, we should do something. Promote Hmong literature, promote Asian American literature. There was like, not a lot of that. I don't think at all at Fresno State. So we wanted to do something.
For sure. And yeah, you're talking about Jur Zhang and New Her. Jur now is an editorial assistant with Zocalo Public Square, and New works as a marketing person for West Care, California. Um, it's nice to hear about a little bit the history about High. I know that you yourself, Yia, were involved in a Fresno community group called Hmong American Writers Circle, which was around more in the early 2000s. Published a groundbreaking anthology called How Do I Begin? Many of our alumni were involved in the editorial board, and so you talk about feeling that like sense of loneliness and wanting to have that community. So I was really wanted to ask you, how did Hawk, Hmong American Writers Circle, and that experience kind of more in a community setting, kind of like help you envision this student group? How those two connect?
That is a great question, Jefferson. And so Hawk, um, Hawk was really pivotal for me to learn that a community is important, right? Because before Hawk, I was really young. I didn't know what to do. I was like, I love reading, I love writing. I don't know what to do with that though exactly. And I was introduced to Hawk through a chance, so it was really great just like meeting Hawk and learning about them and learning how important community is. Unfortunately, Hawk was in hiatus for a while, right? And so I was, before I joined the MFA program, I was just kind of like, okay, what do I do now? And now I need a sense of community, right? And so it was just so fortunate that what I took from Hawk, I could also like, take into High. We build community. We want to meet people. Oh, we want to reach out to people networking, right? So it was just really nice. It was great.
Mhm.
Also the work, also the workshopping and how to talk about writing and reading, and so that's just Hawk was a great group, and we could take some of that to high. So
Wonderful. I remember hearing you for the first time before you were a student here. You read at a reading that the Hmong poet Andre Yang put on. It's called A Field of Fire. It was a series for AAI AAPI Heritage Month. And you read an extraordinary piece that kind of had so much of your Hmongness in it, but yet you were also like working retail. And so it was like how do your cultural experiences kind of like mesh with your everyday experiences. So I loved that piece. It was really wonderful to have you eventually come to the program. Hua, I want to ask you a little bit. Hua is our current High president, a first year MFA student on campus, and undergrad alumni. And Hua, when you were an undergrad, that was the time when High started. And you have a piece I know that's published in the very first issue of High Journal in 2020. I brought it with me today. It's a poem. I know you're writing more fiction now. So I wanted to know, as an undergrad, what was that like for you to come to campus and then, wow, here's like a Hmong writers group, a Hmong writers club right here on campus, and then all of a sudden now you're published in that book. What was that like for you?
Wow. It's really interesting that you bring this up because now that I think about it, when I was a freshman, that was when High was established. And so our literary genesis kind of intersects in this way. And so I feel like I've always grown alongside High. And I think I've been published in every journal until now too, which is really amazing. But um, at that time, that was also the time when the concept of literary journals were being introduced to me, and so it was like a whole new world was being opened up, and it also posed very difficult questions for me. It wasn't even a am I welcome here? It was a how am I welcome in this type of industry? And Hi, a literary journal really answered that question for me because it was kind of an entry tool that allowed me to get started in publishing and it was low stakes. So using the knowledge that I gained from this process, I was then able to publish in larger literary journals. And so this is one subtle way in which Hi really prepares sprouting Hmong writers for the larger publishing industry at hand.
That's wonderful. I know you've published in multiple places. You've been like an award winner in a couple journals as well. Now that you're a graduate student, it's only your first year, but you're already club president. And so, can you talk a little bit about what that evolution just in the last like 3 years has meant to your progress as a writer, your progress as like a member of this writing community? Yeah, what's that like for you?
Oh, I don't even know. I just I feel like what really makes up the experience are the officers themselves. I'm just really grateful to work with currently Brandon, Tori, and Bella because they each bring a set of different skills to the club that really just helps us thrive. I know, for instance, Brendan is really good with outreach, and then Bella's really good at selling things. So, for the speaker event that we have coming up, I know we're going to put Bella in charge of selling books already because that's where she thrives the most. And so, I think it's just really the people that I surround myself with in the club that has really influenced my writing. For instance, also Dante and Yennefer, previously known as Tony and Gao, who have really taught me important things about my own writing, such as the exoticization of Asians, of Hmong culture in my writing. And so I have to ask myself whenever I write, am I doing that? And it was Yennefer and Dante who taught me to ask myself that. So I really appreciate them for it.
It's wonderful. While I was talking about previous members of the club who are, alumni, and as Ia mentioned, that community, right, is you really feel that on multiple levels of your work as a student, your work in the club. I'm curious. Maybe we can start with Ia on this. What feedback has High received about the book? There have been four of them now. I know you participated in the first several books. Both early and current. What's the feedback been? How's it been received?
it has been very encouraging from the start. I'm so grateful for all the support that I've received here at Fresno State and in the community. All the people who have submitted work, and how they thank us for this opportunity. And I think it's so important because what really amazed me about this journal was like when we first put off the call for submission, we had submissions like nationwide. I did not know the reach would be nationwide. I thought it'd be local. I thought it would just be, like Central Valley, California. But it was like, we had submissions from like the East Coast, from the Midwest, and it was just amazing. So I was like really surprised, and I was like grateful.
For sure. I know that Hi hasn't had the opportunity yet to have an in person, on ground journal launch. I know we're going to rectify that coming up in May when the fifth version of the journal comes. But I think the kind of the upside of that was we got to see some of those international participants, right? Your book launches were held on Zoom, they were held virtually. People were tuning in from all over the country, all over the world to both read and to listen. And again, maybe I can ask Hua, what was that experience like for you? Again, you're Fresno writer, you're really focused on that community that you're building here among your student peers. But now all of a sudden you have people from Minneapolis, you have people from LA, from New York, from all over the world kind of tuned in. So what was that experience like for you so far?
Um, well, I was like, "The world doesn't revolve around me." What? No, I'm joking, but yeah, seriously, it was like that though. It was like, "Okay, well, I guess I have competition." Just thinking about it realistically, there's all these amazing poets and writers, and I really need to up my game, so that exposure was really, really eye-opening in that way.
That's wonderful. I want to ask you both a little bit about your club advisor, the poet and educator, Mai Vang. Mai is taught here at Fresno State since 2019, so it was about a year before, or it was the first year that the group was founded. And she's a wonderful mentor. In addition to being a great poet and educator, this whole literary operation, as you both described, totally student driven. You all are forming great community with it. But could each of you talk a little bit about what role Minder has had as a mentor, maybe to you individually and then to the club? And maybe we could start with you since you were there at the founding with her there as advisor.
Yeah, my Dur is amazing, and I knew my Dur before this, right? So she was in Hawk too, and so she was always like a big inspiration for me, right? And so it was amazing just to like be able to, like here we are at Fresno State together, right? So that was amazing in the first place. But then when she became our advisor, and I could work with her, in a closer capacity, and she's so supportive, and it really meant a lot to her too. I think she's a writer, she's a professor, she's so busy, right? And but the time she took, our first year that we were figuring this out, and we're like, what are we doing, right? I remember we had like monthly meetings, and we had like agendas, and we had like a whole calendar, and we communicated like really closely, and there was a lot of collaboration, and she let us like breathe on our own, so it was very much student driven. She she let us know, hey, this is your thing, right? But she was always there to support us and to guide us through things we didn't know, right? And so she was amazing. Yeah, she is amazing.
Wonderful. Yeah, Chris Minder is like a Pulitzer Prize finalist, Walt Whitman Award winner from Academy of American Poets for her debut book, and also just a great person. And so, Hua, again, you're very lucky. You started as an undergraduate in our English department, and then now in the MFA program, and you have this incredible Hmong poet who is among your teachers. And what's that been like from you from the beginning?
Yeah, well, I remember reading Afterland, and then I cried on the very first opening poem, so that says a lot already. But being around my Der has inspired a lot of confidence in me as both student, writer, thinker, and learner because just being in her presence all the time, she has a certain confidence and determination to her that is contagious. She's very sure about herself, about what she wants to do. And so working with someone like that, it makes you sure of yourself. You know where you're going. You know what you have to get done. So it's really just like growth all the time when you're with Miter. And as club president, working with her, I know I can confide in her about anything because she's very transparent. If I have an issue, I'll bring it to her and she'll tell me both the pros and the cons of that issue without hiding anything from me. So it really helps me make the decisions that I should be making to keep the club running, to keep the club doing what's best for the club. And so I just really appreciate that. And yeah.
Minder is the best.
Yeah.
I want to ask each of you a little bit about your own writing. While you mentioned a moment ago a couple of your peers, former high members, um, you know, kind of checking you, right, about exoticizing certain cultural things in your pieces. And of course, we've talked about community that that you experience with your peers. What's your writing about? And maybe you could talk a little bit about what's in the journals previously, but what's your writing about?
Oh no, the journals are old writing. I don't want to
They're
talk about that. That's
they're
in the
they're
past.
they're earlier versions, right? They're
Yeah.
drafts.
Well, my writing right now is focusing on a lot of supernatural and mythological elements around the Hmong culture, and I like to weave in some queer themes with that. So, yeah, that's what I got going on.
That's good. Your pieces now, where are they? Where have they evolved in the couple years since you've graduated with your MFA?
Just like Hua, I do incorporate elements of the supernatural of like mythology, folklore. I think that's like maybe it's like a part of like the Hmong, right? Because a lot of our stories is so it's imaginative, it's creative, and it's verbal storytelling, right? And it expands and it evolves over time. And I think we take that into our writing too, right? I think for me, it's really interesting to think of what Hmong writing is, at least for me, because I'm like, what is it? Like, what is that, right? And so I have ever evolving ideas over the years, and now I also take inspiration from Burley Vang. So Burley Vang was like the founder of Hawk, right? The group that really inspired me to um, also create High. And so I think I remember Burley reading this one poem about like zombies and Valentine's, and I'm like, oh, that could be what a Hmong poem is, like, yes, I do incorporate like a lot of like supernatural. I think it's like storytelling passed down from my parents, but also like I like to think of what a modern Hmong storyteller would be like. I think it's exciting to see what like other people have come up with and what I could come up with too.
For sure. Burley Vang, you mentioned, of course, is a Fresno State alum, a wonderful poet and nonfiction writer, and he's also a film director. He and his brother Abel Vang have won like Academy of Arts and Sciences fellowships. They've made horror pictures that have kind of like nothing to do with Hmong culture, but also heavily they are Hmong culture. And so I love how you both describe kind of that supernatural. Now I'm going to ask you both a question. Both of you I know are primarily fiction writers, and we've had individually these conversations about poetry. And I'm of the thinking that, if you're a writer in Fresno, you're going to have poetry in your work. That's inevitable. And so I know that the two of you have both kind of maybe in some ways resisted calling yourself a poet. So I don't know if each of you could talk a little bit about how poetry is part of your work or how that language is part of your work versus, versus more prose writing or fiction writing. And while you're kind of grinning about this one, so maybe you could start about that.
Well, I think poetry has definitely influenced my fiction. I like the surprising language that comes with poetry, and I tend to use that a lot in my fiction. And I remember in workshop, my peers are always surprised at how I put together words, and I think that stems a lot from my poetic background. But at the same time, I guess I've just resisted the term poet because it lays so many burdens, it seems like. I don't know. I think it's just like the pressure to be creative, because if you're a poet, you're automatically categorized as someone who's creative, who thinks outside the box, and so that just puts a lot of pressure on me to always be creating something that will surprise people. And so I don't know, I'm a perfectionist, so I'm always wanting to surprise people, and so I just kind of got tired of it over time, and I don't know, I would still call myself a poet, but I have mixed feelings about it, just very mixed feelings.
Sure. Yeah. What about poetry in your fiction?
I think that's a really great question, Jefferson. And kind of going off on what I was saying about the label of, I guess, being a poet, right? I think like, especially towards the second half of my MFA years too, I was thinking about how we like separate all the genres, right? Like the poets and the nonfiction and the fiction. And I'm like, what if someone is kind of like all of them, right? in a way, maybe we are all of them. And so I know you would talk to me about like poetry, right? And how I should call myself a poet too, right? And so I started being more open-minded to that. The more I learned about like, more experimental genres or how all the genres can really like interweave with each other and how maybe there shouldn't be labels. That was something I've discussed, with fellow students in MFA too. But yeah, I think I think in a way, um, they are all like, blended together and um I don't write too much poetry, but I love language and I love like the sound and the musicality and how rhythms and how things can flow. So I realized that I was having a discussion with Jer once and I was just I don't know, it was about a sentence, right? And I was like, this has to sound right. Like I have a filler sentence here. It doesn't really say anything, but it has to have the right flow and rhythm. And she's like, "Oh, are you like, I've never thought about sentences that way." So I guess maybe that's like part of poetry that I take into prose, into fiction writing. I love the way things also sound.
For sure. I think there's a lot of poetry in what you both do, whether you call yourself a poet or not. I'm curious for just a little bit for listeners who, obviously may know writing and Hmong peoples. What is Hmong writing like? And so I'm kind of curious if each of you has one or two, Hmong writers out there. We've mentioned Minder Vang, Burley Vang, and several others. Um, who are some Hmong writers that you like and would like to just talk briefly about? Maybe you could start us out.
Um, One of my inspirations was definitely Solvang. So he was also part of the Hmong American Writers Circle, right? And so he was very welcoming, and he's one of those guys who really taught me, hey, this is what a community could be like, a community of writers, of Hmong writers, and so he was always very welcoming. Also Bob Mua, like he passed away a few years ago, but Bob Mua was also very welcoming, and he and Soul were poets. Now was I would consider myself a fiction writer, but they were always so welcoming, and it was they were older too, a little older, so I saw them as pioneers, right? Sorry,
No worries.
pioneers of like of Hmong American writing, and it was great inspiration to meet those two and to read their writing and to know them as writers and friends. And also, I'm like shout out to My Name Mua because My Name Mua is she's great. She's in the Midwest, but she's also a huge inspiration. She has, she was like I think the first one really I think to like have a to publish an anthology. It was like Bamboo Among the Oaks.
Bamboo Among the Oaks.
And then she had a literary journal for a while too, Bando Voice, and so she is also a big inspiration. Yeah.
And I know that My Nang Mua has visited campus for both High and for Hawk. Who are some of the Hmong writers that you gravitate towards?
Okay, this question is really easy for me because I have a lot of favorites, but I really like Lisa Lee Herrick's creative nonfiction. I remember I discovered her by myself when I was just surfing through the internet, and it was a piece about squirrels, and that's what I really like about her work because she takes Hmong cuisine. Oh, sorry, you thought I meant squirrels like pets, like animals? No, I meant the dish squirrels, the Hmong dish. So she takes Hmong cuisine and then she like weaves it into a story of family origins or Hmong culture, and it just makes it really intimate to me. And I think what's the most important thing about her work is it's about the hidden feeling that you kind of have to grasp when you read. It's not about what's on the page, it's about how you're feeling it. And so that's one way in which I really, really like reading her work because when I read her work, I just feel. And it's really that simple. It's just feeling and it's enlightening. Um, and another Hmong author, writer, is Lori M. Lee, and I'm reading Pahua and the Soul Stealer right now, and Lori M. Lee just has a way of characterization. She's really great with dynamic characters, creating characters with personality that feel real, that move on the page, that are so just alive. And yeah, I recommend Lori M. Lee.
Very good. So you had Lori M. Lee, Lisa Lee Herrick, My Nang Mua, Phoua, and Sol Vang, all great Hmong writers. In the couple minutes we have left, I wanted to ask both of you a little bit about the HAI Journal's future. And so, Yia, as the founder, this is now the 5-year mark. What would you hope for HAI Literary Journal's next 5 years?
When you said it was a 5-year mark, I was like, oh my gosh, it's 5 years already. Like, I thought it was crazy. But I really hope it can keep going. I mean, that was the fear, because again, Hmong writers, I feel it's just a small group, and I hope there's more students who keep on coming to keep it going strong. Like, it's such an amazing opportunity for people to start, as Hua said, low key stakes and learning how things get published and how you get published.
It's wonderful. And Hua, now you're seeing there's several Hmong undergrads, Hmong writer undergrads in your club, and they're coming up, and hopefully we'll continue with you. So in addition to the 5th book, which I know you're in production on right now, I hope to do a launch on in early May. What else is ahead for HAI this year?
Well, this year we're having our first in-person speaker event, so I hope to keep that rolling because I know in the past we've only had it virtually. So to keep it as in person for the next few years would be great. And then also, I think to be a well-rounded president, you have to identify areas for improvement. And I think one of those areas right now that we need to improve on is connection between High and its contributors because we don't really promote our contributors or whatever new work they may have. So I think we need to start doing that on our social medias.
Kind of staying networked and still keep telling that story beyond the book.
Yes, that's right.
That's wonderful. All right. Thank you to Yia Lee and Phoua Lee for joining us today. It was great talking with you both. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
The 5th anniversary issue of the Hmong American Ink Stories Journal will be out in early May. You can search for HAI Fresno on Instagram for the latest news from the club. Their speaker event with Alexandra Chang also is on March 16th on campus. If you're interested in learning about upcoming events for the College of Arts and Humanities, please go online to calendar.fresnostate.edu, and you'll find concerts, movie screenings, author readings, and more. I am Jefferson Beavers, sitting in today for Benjamin Kirk. Stay tuned next time for another episode of Artful Discourse.
Artful Discourse is a production of the College of Arts and Humanities at California State University, Fresno. The Dean is Dr. Honora Chapman, and the Associate Dean is Dr. Sergio Laporta. This program is written, directed, and produced by me, Benjamin Kirk, the college's communication specialist. The theme song for Artful Discourse is Maiden Voyage by Fresno State music professor Benjamin Boone from his album, Joy. More information about his music can be found at benjaminboone.com. Special thanks to KFSR and FSR Underground General Manager Julie Lindahl for making this show possible. You can learn more about the College of Arts and Humanities and find an archive of our shows at our website, cah.fresnostate.edu, or on our blog, fresnostatecah.com.